We had to get our bags packed and put them in big plastic bags.
Escaping Hurricane Patricia. We hear from one vacationing couple who experienced the storm firsthand.
3 years have passed since Superstorm Sandy hit the East Coast. I'll look back.
I just remember being scared of the weather when I was a little kid.
Plus, Denver Broncos tight end Owen Daniels stops by the WeatherNation studios. Find out how his fear of weather turned him into a meteorologist.
WeatherNation Tonight starts right now.
Thanks for joining us. I'm meteorologist Corey Christensen.
And I'm meteorologist Rhonda Lee. Lots of weather hitting the northwest. Let's take a look down there with meteorologist David Neal and Viper. He has the latest. David?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. As we look now, the worst of the weather at the moment is moving to the north and northeast up into the northeastern United States. We have low pressure and adjacent gradient wind that's coming in from the south-southeast. And it's strong, too. We're also seeing the heavy rain into the area now around Philadelphia, back over to New York City, and moving northward all the way up into Boston and into Portland. And it looks like at the moment, we're looking at some of these winds here. I just was looking at some of these winds in excess of 40 miles per hour coming into the western end of Long Island Sound. I mean, it's really heavy stuff, and it's going to be creating some problems, maybe even some coastal flooding moving into the bay from the south because of the direction of that wind. It's coming in, and you can see there's a buoy out here that has a south-southeast wind at 27, gusting to 34, just a few miles offshore with 10-foot waves coming into the Sandy Hook area. Look at this, gusting to 22. And as we go a little bit further north, as I said, into the Sound, there's wind gusting to 43 just to the south and west of New York City. Elizabeth, also some high winds coming into that area too, and this extends far to the north, all the way up into Providence in Boston, where we have some winds gusting in excess of 30. We'll keep you up to date on that more throughout this broadcast. Corey?
Hurricane Patricia will go down as the strongest storm ever recorded in the Western Hemisphere, with sustained winds of 200 miles an hour. Meteorologist Jason Lindsay spoke with one couple who rode out the storm in Mexico. That's new tonight.
Well, we were vacationing. That was it. We were there with family and friends, and we were going to spend a week in Puerto Vallarta.
A week the Spadafino family will never forget.
Most catastrophic hurricane on the planet coming to Puerto Vallarta.
That's the alert the Spadafino family received on their phone, which forced them to quickly come up with a plan.
We had to get our bags packed and put them in big plastic bags, and they told us to put them up in a closet. You know, only thing that we were going to keep with us for that night in case something happened was just whatever you felt like you needed to have.
And after waiting out the storm with many other hotel guests, there was some good news.
Just heavy rain. So it ended up being a torrential downpour, no wind, no surge, and we were very happy. We just dodged the bullet.
I'm meteorologist Jason Lindsay for WeatherNation.
All right, there's a nice shot of the Brooklyn Bridge. A few rain showers still in the vicinity. For the most part, though, temperature-wise, we're not really doing so badly. I mean, look down to the south there in D.C. It's about 70 degrees for you. It's 67 right now in New York City. It gets a little colder, of course, as we go up further north in the 50s and in the lower 60s as well. And as David mentioned, that wind is coming in from the south and from the east at the same time, and that's kind of our problem. We're kind of stuck in the middle of that, and you see our wind concerns from at least today through Thursday as well. You see our lake wind advisories, wind advisories as well. So it's going to be a pretty windy go of it for the next several days through upstate New York in particular and along the Great Lakes. Now mild, as we've already seen, a high pressure pretty much firmly in control, even though we still have our fair share of cloud cover around. But for the most part, we're going to start to see our conditions improve over the next few days until the next system, of course, comes on by. Look at our warm sector right there into New York and into Philly, giving us some rain through Wednesday and into Thursday as well. And we clear out pretty well for at least game 3 in the New York metro area for the World Series. So after all said and done, Corey, it's really not a bad forecast to come.
And it's going to be tough to beat game 1. That was exciting last night.
It was. 14 innings?
14 innings? Yes, indeed.
Well, there's much more to come on WeatherNation tonight.
Including Denver Broncos tight end Owen Daniels. He stops by our studio to share the story behind why he decided to become a meteorologist. And 3 years ago tomorrow, the Northeast was hit hard by Superstorm Sandy. We take a look back.
And the conversation continues on Facebook, of course. Just search WeatherNation, all one word. We'd love to see you there. And hey, send us some pictures. We'll be back in a few minutes.
We thank you again for coming back with us here tonight on WeatherNation. We appreciate it. We're following the weather for you across the eastern half of the country, specifically where we have some of the high winds now moving across the upper portions of New England, from D.C. to Philadelphia, all the way up into New York City. Some of the heaviest banding is ongoing right now. The heavy rain just along Long Island through the sound northward to Hartford and back over to Providence. Looks like some of this rainfall is coming down at heavy rates. We've had over 1/4 of an inch of rain over the past 30 minutes, and it is still coming down very hard there along Long Island up to Hartford, and looks like that's going to be a place where it will continue for a little while longer. I can show you that we do have some really strong winds into the area as well. Some of these winds in excess of 40 miles per hour just inside the sound. There's a 36-mile-per-hour wind there, and again from the south-southeast at 20, then gusting to 36, and just off to the south we have some 40-mile-per-hour winds as well. Corey, we'll talk more about this coming up in a few moments.
Thanks, David. It was called Superstorm Sandy, the storm that forever changed how we look at tropical cyclones as they travel up the East Coast. Weather Nation's John Van Pelt has a look back 3 years later.
Although Sandy was the deadliest and most destructive hurricane of the 2012 Atlantic hurricane season, killing 157 in the U.S. alone, and the second costliest hurricane in U.S. history at over $71 billion, early on it wasn't treated as the scary destroyer that it turned out to be, for several reasons, but one stands out. After losing the designation of hurricane, for many, Sandy lost the gravity that went with that classification as a perceived threat, and that led many people in the storm's path to take it less seriously than they should have. The storm was a monster that made history just a few days after prompting school closings in Florida, slamming the Northeast on the 21st anniversary of the killer hybrid system dubbed the perfect storm. Sandy was a different kind of storm in several ways. Its damaging tropical storm force wind field was immense. It reached from Maine to South Carolina. And with gusts to 60 miles per hour, Sandy made waves of up to 20 feet in the middle of the Great Lakes, while dumping as much as 3 feet of snow on the central Appalachian Mountains. In the Northeast, Sandy proved to everybody that tropical systems in the Atlantic are not only dangerous for the Southeast and Gulf coasts. New Jersey and New York took tremendous poundings from Sandy. From wind that knocked over 100-year-old trees, to storm surge that destroyed houses and not only flooded coastal towns, but also hammered the biggest city in the nation. The National Weather Service says that because of Sandy's destructive nature, they broadened the definitions of hurricane and tropical storm watches and warnings to allow them to be issued or stay in effect after a tropical cyclone becomes post-tropical. And the National Hurricane Center may now continue issuing advisories during the post-tropical stage of a storm, when they would have previously turned over communications to local National Weather Service offices. As for recovery, the work continues to rebuild what was lost during Sandy. In the 3 years since the storm struck, FEMA has provided $6.8 billion to date to help New Jersey's recovery efforts alone. As always, a big lesson from this storm is that individual family preparedness can go a long way to lessen impacts from large-scale disasters like Sandy. If we can take care of ourselves for a few days in emergencies, it eases the stresses on society as a whole. For Weather Nation, I'm John Van Pelt.
All right, indeed, an interesting storm, Sandy. A lot of lessons were learned from that particular system. At this point, no tropical development is expected on either side of the globe for us anyway, all the way from Hawaii, which has a lot of dry air in place, down through the Gulf and the Caribbean as well. And of course, the Atlantic also looking rather calm and quiet. Over the next few days, nothing really is expected, and frankly, we're on the downslide as far as storms go. Now look at this. The Atlantic season, pretty inane at best, and it really held true. We got to Joaquin, which was one of our stronger storms. Hurricane season for this year, East Pacific, my word, we got all the way through there. Look at 16 storms, 12 hurricanes, 9 of them major storms. We didn't quite get to Rick, although there was a small threat of it just last week.
And not totally done with hurricane season just yet. Coming up, the Denver Broncos take over Weather Nation.
That's right. Okay, maybe not the whole team, Corey, but tight end Owen Daniels, who just happens to be a meteorologist, he makes the most sense for somebody to come on board here to help us out and study meteorology. He told us why he did that.
We're finally seeing snow out west in places where we want to get it, but it's been late to come. How that's impacted ski resorts. That's
and welcome back to Weather Nation. We appreciate you being with us tonight as we are live looking at the weather across the east and northeastern United States, where once again we have the heaviest weather, and part of this is the whole system that we followed. Coming across much of Mexico as a hurricane, but then joining forces with a low pressure coming across the southern United States. The thing that caused a tremendous amount of rainfall, over 20 inches of rainfall at one point into eastern Texas. Something that we were watching in Corsicana, Texas, where it came down very hard in just a little over a 24-hour period. Now, some of that rain is off to the north and to the east, from Portland back over to Boston, including Hartford and New York City, where once again we have a pressure gradient causing high winds into the area. In some cases, over 40-mile-per-hour gusts are being reported in and around the Sound in New York City. It looks like just north of Long Island Sound, the westernmost part specifically, where we have some winds around 40 miles per hour, 27 out of the southeast to 27, 13-foot waves coming into the Sound, the western portions of the bay as well. And there's a south wind at Sandy Hook at 20 miles per hour and a 10-foot wave coming into the area there, too. This is going to be the norm for the next little while this evening. We'll follow this, let you know if there are any problems, and talk more about it through the hour, Rhonda.
All right, thanks, David. Now, while it's raining out east, we're finally getting a chance to talk about snow in the west. Meteorologist Chris Bianchi explains why a warm October meant a late ski season.
For skiers and snowboarders out west, it is time to smile. Reason why: the first 2 ski resorts in the state of Colorado set to open up for business coming up on Thursday, October the 29th. That's later than usual. Reason why we've opened things up so late, generally speaking, is we've been so darn warm. How about Denver? You're already about 6 degrees above where you should be for the entire month of October. If you're 3 to 4 degrees above for a month, that is a big time anomaly or a big time difference. When you're getting to 8+, that is unreal heat. It's been very much of a summer-like pattern across the Rocky Mountain West, so from Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, down into Utah, Idaho, Sun Valley. We've been just way off in terms of those temperatures. So first and foremost, that leads to big-time problems with getting natural snow, but it also means we can't make snow because we need cold temperatures. Of course, right? Snow, cold temperatures. Ideally, you want to have those temperatures in the teens to make snow. And also what you need really dry air to make snow. We haven't had that. We've also had a fair bit of precipitation, so we haven't had that really kind of dry air that we need. Cold, dry air is good for snow making, and you want that bigger gap between the actual air temperature and your dew point or your saturation point. Also, El Nino could mean some increased precipitation, but also means the possibility for more warm conditions, especially for the San Juans, the Sangre de Cristos. We get a little snow in northern New Mexico over your next few days. For Weather Nation, meteorologist Chris Bianchi.
Well, I know at least one spot where we've been able to make some of that snow. Fargo, North Dakota. Check this out. Snow on the ground, not very heavy accumulations, but heavy enough in north central Minnesota. We were able to build the season's first snowman for this region. Kind of a small guy, but that's okay. In St. Cloud, been watching this camera through much of the afternoon to the evening. We've got big fat snowflakes going across the camera here, and 33 degrees is our current temperature. With the wind blowing, however, it's been feeling more like it's in the 20s. Wind chills, a big issue for the upper Midwest and also the high plains. We've got some colder air coming in along with that snow right around the Twin Cities area, and even a few snowflakes all the way down into Iowa as well. Check out the wind speeds. We've seen sustained winds 25 to 35 miles an hour across the Dakotas. Look at what's happening out across the upper Midwest. 23 miles an hour in Mason City, 24 for Milwaukee. Very gusty winds and cold temperatures, 30s and 40s, and only expected to get colder as we get through the rest of the night. Snow does eventually start to push on out once we get into Thursday, and also Friday brings in some drier weather. A quick check on what's happening in Kansas City. Of course, no snow expected there, but we do have mostly cloudy skies, bit of a breeze, perhaps an isolated shower by the time folks start heading home from World Series Game 2 for tonight.
All right, there's much more to come on Weather Nation tonight, including a look at possible side effects from El Nino.
Find out how a warmer winter could mean more snake sightings. Plus,
but you don't really know if you're in El Nino till it's over, and you kind of go back and look at all the data from it.
Owen Daniels from the Denver Broncos stopped by the Weather Nation studios to try his hand at forecasting. Find out what drove him to become a meteorologist.
And the weather never stops. Visit our website, weathernationtv.com, for the latest weather news anytime.